In a bustling city filled with towering skyscrapers, busy streets, and the constant hum of activity, there lived a woman named Emma Carter. Emma wasn't someone who stood out in a crowd. She didn't wear expensive clothes or drive fancy cars. Instead, she spent her days working as a librarian at a small, cozy library tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The library was her sanctuary, a place where books lined the walls, sunlight streamed through large windows, and the smell of old paper mingled with fresh coffee from the tiny cafe inside. Emma's life was simple but fulfilling. She loved helping people find the perfect book to read, whether it was a thrilling mystery novel or a heartwarming romance. Her co-workers adored her for her kindness, and the regular visitors always greeted her with warm smiles. But what most people didn't know about Emma was that she had a secret passion, one that brought her immense joy and comfort. Every evening after work, Emma would walk to the local community center where an old, slightly out-of-tune piano sat waiting for her. It wasn't much to look at, with chipped paint and keys that stuck occasionally, but to Emma, it was magical. Sitting down at the piano felt like stepping into another world, a world where worries disappeared, and all that mattered was the music flowing from her fingertips. Music had been a part of Emma's life since she was a child. Growing up in a modest household, she hadn't been able to afford formal lessons, so she taught herself by listening to recordings and practicing late into the night. Over time, she developed a remarkable talent. Her playing was expressive, full of emotion, and uniquely hers. Yet despite her skill, Emma rarely performed in front of others. She preferred to keep this part of her life private, sharing it only with the few close friends who knew about her love for the piano. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emma finished her shift at the library and decided to take a different route home. The air was cool, carrying the scent of fallen leaves, and she wanted to enjoy the peacefulness of the season. As she strolled along the sidewalk, lost in thought, she began humming softly to herself, a habit she often indulged in when she was happy or relaxed. Unbeknownst to her, her soft melody caught the attention of someone nearby. Adrian Langley was a man whose name was well known throughout the city. He was wealthy, successful, and incredibly arrogant. Adrian had built his empire through ruthless business tactics and sheer determination. To many, he was a symbol of power and sophistication, but to those who worked closely with him, he was known for his biting sarcasm and disdain for anyone he deemed beneath him. On this particular day, Adrian had just left a meeting and was walking toward his sleek black car when he heard Emma humming. Intrigued, he paused and turned to see who it was. When Adrian saw Emma, his first impression was dismissive. She wore plain clothes, carried a tote bag filled with library books, and looked nothing like the polished individuals he usually associated with. Assuming she was just another ordinary person, Adrian smirked and approached her. "What's that tune you're humming?" he asked, his tone dripping with mockery. "Do you actually know anything about music, or are you just making noise?" Emma stopped in her tracks, startled by the sudden question. She glanced at Adrian, recognizing him instantly. Everyone in the city knew who he was, and his reputation preceded him. Feeling uncomfortable under his piercing gaze, Emma hesitated before answering. I was just humming something I like," she said quietly, clutching her tote bag tighter. Adrian chuckled, clearly amused by her timid response. "Oh, really? So, you think you understand music, do you?" he pressed, his voice laced with condescension. "Tell me, have you ever even touched a piano?" Emma felt a pang of irritation but chose not to rise to his bait. Instead, she nodded, slightly. "Yes, I play sometimes," she admitted, keeping her tone neutral. This answer seemed to amuse Adrian even more. He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms over his chest. "Well, isn't that quaint?" he remarked sarcastically. Then, as if struck by an idea, his expression shifted to one of mischief. "You know what? I'm hosting a gala next week, a gathering of the city's finest minds and talents. Why don't you come and play for us? Let's see if your talent holds up against real musicians." Emma blinked, taken aback by the unexpected invitation. She opened her mouth to decline, but Adrian cut her off before she could speak. Oh, come now, don't be shy, it'll be fun, for me at least. His grin widened, revealing the cruel intent behind his words. He fully expected Emma to fail miserably, providing him with yet another opportunity to mock someone he considered inferior. With that, Adrian turned on his heel and climbed into his car, leaving Emma standing on the sidewalk, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. As the engine roared to life and the vehicle sped away, Emma let out a shaky breath. She couldn't believe what had just happened. How dare he treat her like that? Who did he think he was? But as anger gave way to reflection, Emma realized something important. Adrian's mockery didn't define her. She knew how much music meant to her, and she refused to let his arrogance diminish her love for it. Still, the thought of attending his gala and performing in front of his elite circle filled her with dread. What if she made a fool of herself? What if he was right and she wasn't good enough? Despite these doubts, a spark of defiance ignited within Emma. Maybe, just maybe, this could be her chance to prove him wrong, not just to him but to herself as well. Emma walked home that evening with a whirlwind of thoughts spinning in her mind. Adrian's mocking words echoed in her ears, taunting her and making her feel small. Yet alongside the hurt, there was another feeling, a quiet determination that refused to let his arrogance win. By the time she reached her tiny apartment, she had made up her mind. She wouldn't let him intimidate her anymore. If he thought she was incapable of playing the piano well, then she would show him otherwise. The next morning, Emma went about her routine at the library, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the gala. She tried to focus on shelving books and assisting patrons, but every now and then, she found herself staring off into space, imagining what it would be like to stand in front of an audience dressed in expensive suits and gowns. Would they laugh at her? Would they clap politely just to be kind? Or worse, would they ignore her completely? During her lunch break, Emma confided in her best friend, Mia. Mia worked part-time at the library and had known Emma for years. They were as close as sisters, sharing everything from childhood memories to dreams for the future. When Emma told her about Adrian's challenge, Mia listened intently, her brow furrowing with concern. "Are you serious?" Mia asked after Emma finished explaining. "That guy sounds like such a jerk. Why does he think he can talk to people like that?" Emma sighed, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "I don't know, Mia. Maybe because he's rich and thinks he's better than everyone else." Mia leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You shouldn't let him get to you. He doesn't know anything about you or how talented you are." Emma shook her head. "But what if I'm not good enough? What if I embarrass myself in front of all those people?" Mia placed a reassuring hand on Emma's arm. "Listen to me. You're amazing at the piano. I've heard you play countless times and it always gives me goosebumps. Don't let some arrogant millionaire make you doubt yourself. If anything, this is your chance to prove him wrong, to show him that talent isn't about money or status." Emma hesitated, still unsure. "But what if I mess up? What if I freeze on stage?" Mia grinned mischievously. "Then you'll give him something to remember. Seriously, Emma, you've got nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, he mocks you again, and you walk away knowing you gave it your best shot. But best case scenario, you blow everyone away, including him." Her words struck a chord with Emma. Deep down, she knew Mia was right. This wasn't just about proving something to Adrian. It was about proving something to herself. For years, she had played the piano for her own enjoyment, keeping her talent hidden from the world. Now maybe it was time to step out of her comfort zone and share her gift with others. That evening, Emma returned to the community center with renewed energy. She sat down at the old piano and began to practice. Her fingers danced across the keys, filling the room with melodies that ranged from soft and melancholic to bold and triumphant. Each note carried a piece of her soul, and as the hours passed, she felt more confident than ever before. Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into preparation. She chose a piece that she loved deeply, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was both challenging and beautiful, requiring precision and emotion in equal measure. She practiced tirelessly, sometimes staying late into the night until her fingers ached. Every time she stumbled over a difficult section, she reminded herself why she was doing this. Not for Adrian, but for herself. As the day of the gala approached, Emma's nerves began to kick in. She couldn't shake the image of Adrian smirking at her from across the room, waiting for her to fail. To calm her anxiety, she turned to Mia once again. Together, they visited a second-hand store to find something suitable for Emma to wear. After browsing through racks of dresses, they settled on a simple yet elegant navy blue gown that complemented Emma's fair complexion. Though it wasn't extravagant, it made Emma feel confident and ready to face whatever lay ahead. On the morning of the gala, Emma woke up early. She couldn't eat breakfast, her stomach too knotted with anticipation. Instead, she spent the day reviewing the sheet music one last time and visualizing herself sitting at the grand piano, playing flawlessly. As evening fell, she slipped into her dress, styled her hair neatly, and took a deep breath before heading out the door. When she arrived at Adrian's mansion, her heart sank. The building was enormous, its marble columns and glittering chandeliers a stark contrast to the modest life she led. Valets in crisp uniforms greeted guests arriving in luxury cars while servers circulated with trays of champagne. Emma felt completely out of place, clutching her small clutch tightly as she stepped inside. Adrian spotted her almost immediately. He stood near the entrance, chatting with a group of elegantly dressed guests. When he saw Emma, his lips curled into a smirk. "Well, well," he said loudly enough for those around him to hear. "Look who decided to show up after all." Emma forced a polite smile, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. "Thank you for inviting me," she replied evenly, refusing to let his sarcasm rattle her. Adrian gestured toward the crowd. "Everyone, this is Emma Carter. She's going to grace us with her musical talents tonight. Let's hope she doesn't disappoint." His tone was light, but the underlying mockery was unmistakable. The other guests chuckled politely, some casting curious glances at Emma. She nodded briefly, then excused herself to find a quiet corner where she could collect her thoughts. Standing there, surrounded by strangers who likely doubted her abilities, Emma felt a wave of doubt wash over her. Was she really ready for this? Could she handle the pressure? Just as she was about to retreat entirely, Mia's voice echoed in her mind. "Show him what you're made of." Taking a deep breath, Emma straightened her posture and reminded herself why she was here. This wasn't about Adrian or his cruel games. It was about embracing her passion and proving to herself that she was capable of greatness. With newfound resolve, Emma approached the grand piano set up in the center of the room. The spotlight shone brightly above it, illuminating the polished wood and gleaming keys. As she sat down, the chatter in the room faded, replaced by an expectant silence. All eyes were on her now, waiting to see what she would do. For a moment, Emma hesitated. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. Then, closing her eyes, she took another deep breath and began to play. As Emma's fingers touched the keys of the grand piano, a hush fell over the room. The chatter that had filled the air just moments ago faded into silence, replaced by an almost palpable anticipation. Everyone present seemed to lean forward. Slightly, their curiosity piqued. Some were eager to see if this unassuming woman could live up to Adrian's sarcastic introduction, while others simply waited for the inevitable awkwardness they assumed would follow. Emma blocked out the sea of faces staring at her. She focused instead on the music sheet in front of her and the melody she had practiced so diligently. Her hands moved with precision, pressing down gently on the keys as the first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major began to fill the vast, opulent hall. At first, the sound was soft, almost hesitant, like a whisper floating through the air. But as the piece unfolded, the music grew richer, more confident and undeniably beautiful. The contrast between Emma's simple appearance and the complexity of her playing was striking. Every note she played seemed to carry a story, a tale of longing, resilience, and quiet strength. Her fingers glided across the keys with effortless grace, each movement deliberate yet fluid. There was no stiffness or uncertainty in her performance. Instead, it felt as though the piano itself was breathing life into her emotions. For those watching, the transformation was immediate and profound. What had started as idle curiosity quickly turned into rapt attention. Guests who had initially dismissed Emma as an amateur now found themselves captivated by the depth of her talent. Even those who didn't consider themselves particularly knowledgeable about classical music could feel the power of her interpretation. The melancholic sweetness of the nocturne resonated deeply, stirring something within them that words alone could never express. Adrian stood at the edge of the crowd, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. He had expected Emma to stumble, nervously, perhaps hitting wrong notes or rushing through the piece in embarrassment. Instead, he watched as she commanded the room. Not with arrogance or bravado, but with pure authenticity. As the melody swelled, Adrian felt a strange sensation wash over him. It wasn't anger or frustration this time, but something softer, almost unsettling. For years, he had prided himself on being untouchable, immune to the kind of emotional vulnerability that music often evoked. Yet here he was, standing frozen, unable to look away as Emma poured her soul into every note. The guests around him mirrored his reaction. A young couple seated near the front held hands tightly, their eyes glistening with unshed tears. An elderly man in a tailored suit dabbed at the corners of his eyes with a handkerchief, clearly moved by the performance. Even the servers paused mid-step, setting down their trays to listen intently. The atmosphere in the room shifted entirely. It was no longer a gala filled with pretense and superficiality, but a space where genuine human connection was taking place, one hauntingly beautiful note at a time. Emma, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware of the impact she was having. She had entered a kind of trance, losing herself completely in the music. All the hours spent practicing on the old, out-of-tune piano at the community center had led to this moment. Every late-night session, every mistake she'd corrected, every emotion she'd channeled into her playing, it all culminated in this flawless rendition of Chopin's masterpiece. Her earlier nerves dissolved entirely, replaced by a sense of calm and purpose. This wasn't about proving anything to Adrian anymore. It was about sharing a part of herself with the world, and in doing so, creating something unforgettable. When the final note hung in the air, there was a brief moment of absolute stillness. No one clapped immediately. Instead, the silence lingered, as if the audience needed a few seconds to process what they had just witnessed. Then slowly applause began to ripple through the room. It started softly, almost tentatively, before building into a thunderous ovation. People rose to their feet, cheering and whistling, their admiration unmistakable. Emma blinked, startled, by the sudden eruption of sound. She hadn't expected such a reaction, and for a moment she sat frozen, unsure of what to do next. Finally, she stood up, her cheeks flushed with a mix of pride and disbelief. Bowing slightly, she offered a shy smile to the crowd. The applause continued, growing louder with each passing second. Emma scanned the room, meeting the eyes of several guests who nodded appreciatively or mouthed "beautiful" to her. Among them was Mia, who had managed to sneak into the gala unnoticed. Standing near the back of the room, Mia beamed with pride, silently mouthing, "I told you so." But Emma's gaze eventually landed on Adrian, who was still standing apart from the crowd. His face was pale, his usual smirk replaced by an expression of shock and awe. He looked different, vulnerable even. Emma couldn't quite place the emotion written across his features, but it was clear that he had been profoundly affected by her performance. For once, the arrogant businessman appeared lost for words. As the applause began to die down, Adrian stepped forward hesitantly. The room fell silent again, curious to see how he would respond. Would he try to brush off Emma's success with another sarcastic remark, or would he acknowledge the undeniable talent she had displayed? Clearing his throat, Adrian approached the piano. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if he were carefully choosing his next words. When he finally spoke, his voice lacked its usual sharpness. "Emma," he began, his tone unusually subdued, I owe you an apology." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. No one had anticipated this turn of events, not even Emma. She stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. Was this some sort of trick? Another cruel joke disguised as sincerity? I misjudged you, Adrian continued, his gaze steady despite the weight of everyone's eyes on him. I thought I knew better, but tonight you proved me wrong, in the most incredible way possible. He paused, running a hand through his hair as if searching for the right words. Your talent is extraordinary, and your courage. To come here, to play in front of all these people despite my mockery. It's something I deeply admire. Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't expected an apology, let alone one delivered in front of such a large audience. Part of her wanted to dismiss his words outright, given how he had treated her earlier. But looking into his eyes, she saw sincerity there, something she hadn't noticed before. Perhaps Adrian wasn't as invincible as he liked to appear. Thank you, Emma replied softly, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. I didn't do this to prove anything to you. I did it because music means everything to me, and if my playing touched even one person tonight, then it was worth it. Her words hung in the air, simple yet powerful. Around the room, heads nodded, in agreement. Adrian opened his mouth as if to say more but then closed it, realizing that nothing else needed to be said. Instead, he extended his hand toward Emma, offering a gesture of respect. After a brief hesitation, she accepted it, shaking his hand firmly. The tension in the room melted away, replaced by a newfound warmth. Guests began mingling again, many congratulating Emma on her breathtaking performance. Some even asked if she gave lessons, marveling at her skill. Meanwhile, Adrian retreated to a quieter corner of the room, seemingly lost in thought. For the first time in years, he questioned the values he had long held dear. The belief that wealth and status were the ultimate measures of worth. Emma's humility and passion had challenged everything he thought he knew, leaving him with much to reflect on. And as Emma stood surrounded by admiring strangers, she realized something important. She had not only proven herself to Adrian, but also to herself. In stepping outside her comfort zone, she had discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Tonight, she wasn't just a librarian or a pianist. She was someone who refused to let fear or judgment hold her back. The gala continued long after Emma's performance, but the mood in the room had shifted dramatically. What had started as a gathering of wealthy elites exchanging superficial pleasantries had transformed into something deeper, more meaningful. The guests were no longer just sipping champagne and discussing business deals. They were talking about music, art, and the emotions stirred by Emma's playing. Conversations buzzed around her, with people sharing their thoughts on how her performance had touched them. Some spoke of memories it brought back, while others admitted they hadn't realized how powerful classical music could be until that night. For Adrian, however, the change was far more profound. He wandered through the crowd aimlessly, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. On the surface, he appeared composed, his tailored suit still immaculate, his posture upright, but inside, he felt like a man adrift. For years, Adrian had prided himself on being untouchable, someone who thrived on control and superiority. He had always believed that success was measured by wealth, power, and influence. Yet here he was, shaken to his core by a simple woman whose only weapon had been her talent and courage. As he stood near the grand piano where Emma had performed, Adrian couldn't help but replay the events of the evening in his mind. His initial mockery of Emma now seemed petty and cruel, even to him. He remembered the smirk he'd worn when issuing his challenge, the condescending tone he'd used when introducing her to the crowd. At the time, it had all felt so natural, so justified. But now, thinking back on it, he cringed at his own behavior. How could he have been so blind, so quick to judge? Emma, meanwhile, found herself at the center of attention. People approached, her one after another, eager to congratulate her or ask questions about her musical journey. She answered politely, grateful for their kindness but still feeling slightly overwhelmed. Despite the warmth of the compliments, she couldn't shake the image of Adrian standing near the piano earlier, looking utterly speechless. His apology had caught her off guard, not because she doubted its sincerity, but because it came from someone who seemed incapable of admitting fault. Eventually, Adrian mustered the courage to approach her again. This time, his demeanor was different. Gone was the smug arrogance that had defined him earlier. Instead, he looked almost vulnerable. As he drew closer, Emma noticed the faint lines of exhaustion etched into his face, as though he hadn't slept well in days. It made him seem human, relatable even. "Emma," he began, his voice low and hesitant. "Do you have a moment? There's something I'd like to say." Emma hesitated, unsure of what to expect. After everything that had transpired, she wasn't sure if she trusted him entirely. Still, she nodded and gestured toward an empty corner of the room where they could speak privately. Once they were away from the crowd, Adrian took a deep breath before speaking. "I want to apologize again. For everything," he said, his words slow and deliberate. "What I did was wrong, and there's no excuse for it. I judged you based on appearances, assuming I knew better than anyone else in this room. But tonight you showed me just how wrong I was." Emma listened quietly, her expression unreadable. She didn't interrupt, letting him continue. "I've spent my life surrounded by people who value wealth and status above all else," Adrian admitted, his gaze dropping to the floor. "And somewhere along the way I became one of them. I stopped seeing people for who they really are. I dismissed anyone who didn't fit my narrow definition of success. But your performance, it reminded me of what truly matters. Passion, talent, authenticity, things money can't buy." He paused, searching her face for any sign of forgiveness. When she remained silent, he added, "I know words can't undo what I've done, but I hope you'll give me a chance to make amends. Maybe we can start over." Emma studied him carefully, weighing his words. Part of her wanted to dismiss his apology outright, to hold on to the anger and hurt he had caused, but another part of her recognized the vulnerability in his voice, the genuine regret in his eyes. She realized that everyone makes mistakes, and perhaps the true measure of a person lies not in their errors but in their willingness to learn from them. "I appreciate your apology," she said finally, her tone soft but firm. "And I believe you mean it. But trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight. If you're serious about changing, if you're willing to look beyond the surface and see people for who they truly are, then maybe we can move forward. But it will take time." Adrian nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you," he said, sincerely. "That's all I can ask for." Their conversation ended on that note, leaving both of them with much to think about. As the gala wound down and guests began to leave, Adrian found himself lingering behind. He watched as Emma said goodbye to those who had praised her performance, her smile warm and genuine. She radiated a quiet confidence that he envied, a sense of peace that came from knowing exactly who she was and what mattered most to her. Over the following weeks, Adrian made a conscious effort to change. He began attending events not just to network but to genuinely engage with others. He sought out artists, musicians, and writers eager to learn about their work and support their talents. Slowly but surely, he started using his wealth and influence to uplift those who might otherwise go unnoticed. One of his first initiatives was sponsoring a scholarship program for underprivileged students interested in pursuing careers in the arts. He also donated funds to renovate the community center where Emma practiced, ensuring that aspiring musicians would have access to better instruments and resources. Meanwhile, Emma returned to her normal routine, though her life had changed in subtle ways. Her performance at the gala had opened doors she never imagined possible. Several guests had reached out afterward, offering opportunities to perform at other events or teach private lessons. While she appreciated the newfound recognition, she remained grounded, continuing to work at the library and volunteer at the community center. Teaching piano became especially important to her, as she saw it as a way to inspire others to pursue their passions without fear of judgment. Though their worlds remained vastly different, Adrian and Emma formed an unlikely friendship. They met occasionally for coffee or dinner, discussing everything from music to life philosophies. Through their conversations, Adrian learned valuable lessons about humility and empathy, while Emma discovered new ways to use her talent to make a difference in the world. Their bond was built on mutual respect and admiration, proving that two people from completely different backgrounds could connect on a deeper level. One evening, as they sat together at a small cafe overlooking the city skyline, Adrian turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, "I used to think success was about climbing higher than everyone else. But now I realize it's about lifting others up as you go." Emma smiled, her eyes reflecting the lights of the city. "That's a beautiful way to look at it," she replied. "And honestly, I think you're already doing that." Adrian chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I still have a lot to learn. But thanks to you, I'm starting to see the world differently." As they parted ways that night, both felt a sense of gratitude, not just for each other, but for the unexpected journey that had brought them together. In confronting his flaws and embracing her strengths, they had grown in ways neither could have anticipated. And though their paths might diverge, in the future, the lessons they had learned would stay with them forever. Months passed since the night of the gala, and life in the bustling city continued its usual rhythm. Yet for Emma Carter and Adrian Langley, the changes sparked by that unforgettable evening rippled outward, shaping their lives in ways neither could have predicted. The bond they had formed, fragile at first but growing stronger with time, became a source of inspiration not only for themselves but also for those around them. Emma's days remained much the same on the surface. She still worked at the library, helping patrons find books and organizing reading events for children. But her evenings were now filled with new opportunities. Word of her performance at Adrian's gala spread quickly, leading to invitations to play at local art galleries, charity fundraisers, and even small concerts hosted by community organizations. At first, Emma hesitated to accept so many offers, fearing she might lose the simplicity of her quiet life. However, Mia encouraged her to embrace these moments, reminding her that sharing her talent could bring joy to others. Teaching piano became another cornerstone of Emma's routine. Inspired by Adrian's renovation of the community center, she began offering free lessons to kids from underprivileged neighborhoods. Many of her students reminded her of herself as a child, curious, eager to learn, but lacking access to formal training. Watching them grow more confident with each lesson filled her with pride. One boy, named Ethan, particularly stood out. Shy and withdrawn when he first joined, Ethan blossomed as he learned to express himself through music. By the end of the year, he was playing simple melodies with such enthusiasm that it brought tears to Emma's eyes. Adrian, too, underwent a remarkable transformation. His initial efforts to support the arts grew into a full-fledged passion project. He founded an organization called Harmony Rising, dedicated to providing resources and scholarships to aspiring artists. Through this initiative, he partnered with schools, community centers, and cultural institutions to create programs that nurtured creativity, regardless of background or financial status. Adrian threw himself into the work wholeheartedly, attending meetings, hosting fundraisers, and even taking guitar lessons to better understand the challenges faced by musicians. At first, some skeptics doubted Adrian's sincerity, assuming his sudden interest in philanthropy was merely a public relations stunt. But over time, his actions proved otherwise. He visited classrooms, spoke with struggling artists, and listened intently to their stories. Slowly, people began to see him not as the arrogant businessman he once was, but as someone genuinely committed to making a difference. Even his employees noticed a change in his leadership style. Gone were the biting remarks and impatience. Instead, Adrian fostered a workplace culture built on collaboration and mutual respect. Despite their busy schedules, Emma and Adrian made it a point to stay connected. They met regularly, at cafes, parks, or sometimes simply over phone calls, to share updates about their respective projects. Their conversations often veered beyond logistics, delving into deeper topics like purpose, resilience, and the importance of staying true to oneself. These exchanges enriched both their lives, offering perspectives they might not have considered alone. One crisp autumn afternoon, nearly a year after the gala, Adrian invited Emma to join him for a special event. Curious, she agreed, and arrived at a beautifully restored theater downtown. As she stepped inside, she was greeted by a sea of familiar faces, former students from her piano classes, members of Harmony Rising, and even guests who had attended Adrian's gala. A banner hung above the stage read, "Celebrating Talent, Inspiring Change." "What is all this?" Emma asked, turning to Adrian with wide eyes. He smiled warmly. "It's a celebration, a chance to honor the incredible impact you've had on so many lives, including mine." Before Emma could protest, the lights dimmed, and the program began. First up were performances by some of her youngest students, including Ethan, who played a cheerful tune that earned thunderous applause. Next came speeches from beneficiaries of Harmony Rising, sharing how the organization had helped them pursue their dreams. Finally, Adrian took the stage to deliver a heartfelt address. "When I first met Emma," he began, his voice steady yet emotional, "I judged her unfairly. I assumed I knew everything about her based on appearances. But she taught me something invaluable, that true worth isn't measured by wealth or status but by the courage to follow your passion and uplift others along the way. Tonight we celebrate not just Emma's talent, but the ripple effect of her kindness and determination." The audience erupted into cheers, and Emma felt tears welling up in her eyes. She hadn't expected any of this, an entire evening dedicated to honoring her contributions. When Adrian gestured for her to join him on stage, she hesitated briefly, before walking up to stand beside him. "I don't know what to say," Emma admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "All I ever wanted was to share my love for music and maybe inspire one or two people along the way. Seeing how far that's gone, it's overwhelming and humbling." She paused, glancing at the crowd before continuing. "But none of this would have been possible without the support of amazing friends, students, and mentors, including Adrian. His journey over the past year has shown me that anyone can change if they're willing to listen and learn. So thank you all for believing in me, for supporting each other, and for proving that together we can make the world a little brighter." The standing ovation that followed lasted several minutes, echoing through the theater like a symphony of gratitude. Afterward, as guests mingled and enjoyed refreshments, Emma found herself reflecting on how far she'd come since that fateful encounter with Adrian. What had started as a moment of mockery had transformed into a catalyst for growth, for both of them. In the months that followed, Emma and Adrian continued to collaborate on various projects, using their combined influence to champion the arts and empower underserved communities. Though their friendship remained rooted in mutual respect, it evolved naturally, becoming a partnership based on shared values and goals. They often joked that fate had thrown them together in the most unlikely circumstances, but deep down, they knew it was more than coincidence. It was an opportunity to redefine their lives. Years later, when Emma looked back on that pivotal chapter, she realized it wasn't just about proving herself to Adrian or overcoming self-doubt. It was about embracing vulnerability, trusting in her abilities, and recognizing the power of connection. For Adrian, the lesson was equally profound. Success wasn't about accumulating wealth or accolades, but about leaving a legacy of compassion and understanding. And so, Emma and Adrian's story became a testament to the idea that even the smallest acts of courage can spark monumental change. Whether through music, mentorship, or meaningful relationships, they showed that true greatness lies not in individual achievements, but in the impact we have on others' lives. In a world often divided by differences, they proved that empathy and authenticity could bridge even the widest gaps, and that sometimes the simplest melodies hold the deepest truths.